Welcome to the Skate On State podcast, CommRadio's podcast for Penn State men's hockey. I am Penn State men's hockey insider Adrianna Gallucci, joined alongside
Josh Bartosik, also a Penn State men's hockey insider for CommRadio.
We are super excited to be bringing you the Skate On State podcast. We had our podcast last year with Mac Young, who we are going to miss very, very much.
Rest in peace.
He's
not dead. He just
he's not dead or anything. He's graduated. But, we're going to miss him a lot. But yeah, Skate On State, talking all things Penn State men's hockey from now up until the season, through the season, and just into infinity and eternity forever.
Yeah.
Right. So Penn State just had their recruiting class go in. They brought in 6 forwards, 3 defensemen, and 2 goalies. It's one of their largest recruiting classes in history. I mean, Josh, straight off the bat, what are we going to expect from these new guys?
Yeah, I think you're to expect a lot of these new guys to get a lot of playing time right off the bat, right? There's a whole lot of turnover on this roster. We saw it last year as well when 8 guys graduated, and a bunch of them being, top players, Tor Linden, Kevin Wall, being guys a few years ago. This past year, you see a bunch of big names. Christian Berger still technically in the transfer portal. A bunch of guys getting contracts to move on. Christian Sarlo, Xander Lampa. But Tyler Paquette coming back is huge for this team. He's one of those veteran leaders. They need him. He's a strong physical force. And there's a lot of talent in this class, right? I think we've seen the last 2 years now, especially, that Penn State has gone more towards getting not just the culture fit that they like, but also the talent fit as well. I mean, you look at what they did by getting Aiden Fink, getting Reese Lawback, getting Matt DeMarco, that trio of freshmen, that the kid line, as they were so famously called last year, doing what they did, Aiden Fink leading the team in pretty much every category. Now you have guys coming in. Charlie Serrato is going to be fantastic. He originally was a Michigan commit. J.J. Wybush is a guy that was originally a Merrimack commit. You've got guys that are flipped. Andrew Kuzma was going to go to Maine up until a few months ago. So a lot of young talent on this team. The back end is going to be good as well. You have the majority of that defense coming back. Jimmy Dowd coming back for a 5th year is huge as well. And a few new additions, Nick Fascia, Jay Gallucci, and Cade Christensen being the big 3 there. So I think you're going to see a lot of movement up front with the forwards. I think you'll probably see relatively the same defense as we saw last year. You'll probably see a rotation of those 3 defensemen coming in. And then you have to talk about the goalie, Arseny Sergeev, is a guy who comes in from UConn, a bad UConn team last year. This was a team 2 years ago that was pretty good in the Big East or Hockey East. But now that you come in, he's a guy that put up really good numbers on a team that was very bad in the best conference in college hockey. So it replaces the loss of Liam Solier. You get a guy from the ACHA. You basically are promoting from within, and you still have Noah Grannon as well. So it's going to be, again, it might be a transition year. It could be a year that surprises a lot of people because we haven't seen, a good chunk of this class play yet. Obviously, like you mentioned, 11 guys coming in, 10 of which have not played college hockey before, the only one being the goalie from UConn. So it's going to be probably a transition period for them, but I think that with the amount of talent on this team, they can really shock a lot of people. We saw it last year. They had some big wins. They beat Michigan on the road. They beat Minnesota at home. So they have the talent. It's there. They have to put it all together.
Yeah, I really like the fact that you brought up the kid line, Aiden Fink, Reese Lawback, and Matt DeMarco, because they were such huge offensive factors for Penn State, especially right in the middle of the season when we were coming home for holiday break. And they were on the road in Michigan. They accounted for a majority of the points in that series and just overall. That line did get split up by the end of the year. There were just some things overall with the team that weren't working. So Coach Gallucci thought that it was best to separate the kid line, and it did work for a little bit. But aside from those 3, Casey Amon and Dane Dobiak as well really stepped up in a bunch of big ways. Amon played pretty much every position on the ice except for goalie, and when Chase McLean got hurt midway through the season, Dane Dobiak was there taking faceoffs and really hoping for those 2 to continue the push and that gritty not pretty Penn State mentality for the team. But let's talk a little bit about the goaltender situation. Like you said, bringing in Arseny Sergeev from UConn and still rostering Noah Grannon as well, bringing up the ACHA goalie from the Penn State Ice Lions. Penn State is now back to 3 goalies, which I think is a really smart move. It's where they want to stay anyways. Having a 3rd goalie just in case, God forbid something happens, I think it's a really smart move. all around to keep 3 goalies rostered, but we saw last year at the beginning of the season, Noah Grannon and Liam Souliere going back and forth, getting starts. Noah Grannon was starting over Souliere for a long period of time, and then Noah Grannon didn't have his best performances. About 3/4 of the season, Souliere took the starting role back over. Do you think it's going to be set in stone whether Sergeev or Grannon starts over the other? Do you think that it's going to be similar to last year, where it's sort of mix and match, go back and forth?
I think it is going to be mix and match back and forth for a little bit, specifically because, like you mentioned, we haven't seen Noah Grannon play since, I believe, the middle of January last year against Notre Dame. He had a really bad series there. Liam Solier finally started getting back to that form that we saw in that NCAA tournament run the year prior. But again, then now he's going to Minnesota. And while there were good numbers put up by Sergey, he wasn't the starting goaltender by any means. It was a 1A, 1B over with the Huskies in UConn. And I think to at least start the year, you'll see something similar. That's why they have those non-conference games. We already have a few of those that have been kind of leaked around because other teams have posted their schedule. So I think you will see them split time, probably split weekends, or one goalie goes one weekend, another goalie goes the other. But I do think by the time that conference play rolls around, depending on where this team is, if it's like 2 years ago where they went undefeated in non-conference play, you might have a goalie actually take the starting role like we saw with Liam Solier 2 years ago. Or if it's one of those things where they're still kind of in the middle of the pack fighting to see if they can even get back into a top 15 pairwise position, you might see them continue to split time. But I do think that it's good to have that goalie competition, like you mentioned, and having that third goalie just in case. Put up pretty good numbers, about a 905 save percentage with the Ice Lions and the ACHA. So not bad performances by any means. And, having that competition, like we mentioned, between Grannon and Sergeev coming in is going to be really important for the team. It's going to foster the two of them being able to, bring up their level of intensity and be better goaltenders and better hockey players. So I do think that we'll see probably a split to start. And then I think we'll get a better sense of things, I think probably by the end of October, maybe middle November.
And it was the phrase that was, said in the media room pretty much every Monday when we were there, that iron sharpens iron mentality. It's what Gallucci said about Grannon and Souliere, how they make each other better, that they foster competition on the ice, off the ice, in the weight room, where have you. I think that mentality can be taken to every facet of this team, where everybody's trying to make each other better. Everybody is in competition with each other in a healthy way, just really trying to better the program and better the team. So definitely going to be interesting with the goalie situation going forward. But I want to talk a little bit about the non-conference games that we have confirmed. We have 3 non-conference games confirmed as of June 13th at 2:40 p.m. Penn
Very
State will
specific.
play Canisius. Well, obviously, want to be as specific as I can. Penn State will play Canisius, Army West Point, and Alaska Anchorage. So just some new non-conference faces. They actually did play Army West Point last season. The first game back from that holiday break where there were about, 5 feet of snow in State College. I was supposed to work that game and I could not get out of my building. So just that did not happen. But, those should be pretty fun non-conference games.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you saw Penn State play the Canisius team twice already in the past 3 years. This will be 3 times in 4 years they're playing them. And it's a good Canisius team. Last year, not a good year for them, 58th in pairwise. They were a team that just really struggled. But they're a team that's very physical every year, and they play tough. And I think Gadowski really likes setting them up because this is a Penn State team, especially that doesn't normally have a lot of big-bodied guys. They're normally a very small team. They're a team that focuses on speed and skill. Danny Genevieve, Aiden Fink, both being, under 6 feet tall or just around that area. Genevieve being the smallest player in college hockey. So having a matchup that brings in the intensity and the physicality that I think he wants them to get ready for in Big Ten play will be big. And then going on the road to Alaska Fairbanks is going to be insane. They played Alaska Anchorage last year. They played Alaska 2 years ago at Penn State. And that was an Alaska team that was right on the cusp of making the NCAA tournament. I believe they finished 18th or 19th in pairwise, and because they're independent, it was tough for them to really find a way to get in. This is a very good Alaska team, and on the road, it's going to be a good one because, it's Alaska, right? It's so far away. It's going to be an insane barn, an insane arena. We saw it last year when we went on the road to go cover the LIU game. That was in a practice facility for the New York Islanders, and it still felt like you could probably put the intensity up there with maybe not Pagula, but some other D1 schools. And Army West Point is going to be a big one, too. That was a game that I think really a lot of people saw that and realized that goaltending was just not going to get better, that this team was probably really already looking more towards the next season and building towards that, because for a long time in that game they were losing. They were down by a couple of goals, ended up coming back and winning 7-6, if I remember correctly. That was a wild game, but that was an Army
Yeah,
West
I
Point team
believe that was the largest comeback victory in program history. I'm about 95% sure.
which is, it's great to have that on your record when it comes to a team like Army West Point, which no discredit to them, but they were bottom 5 in pairwise at that time. It's not a good look. And that's a team that also has, did lose to Alaska Anchorage last year. They split that series. They split a series against AIC. And so you're seeing tougher opponents come in this year, Army West Point being the same, but Alaska's going to be a really tough draw for them on the road. Canisius is going to be big at home. And obviously the other one, we already mentioned Army West Point playing them again. But I think we're starting to see, this is a Penn State team that is starting to build from within, starting to have their program that doesn't do a lot of those one and dones or two and dones where you see Michigan and Minnesota, right? These are guys that come in for 3 or 4 years at least and will make a big impact. I think you're starting to see Gallucci realize that this team, with the amount of young talent, has the capability, and facing those tougher non-conference opponents will really help them when it comes to Big Ten play, because the Big Ten is going to be very top heavy again this year. Obviously, Michigan in the transfer portal and just in recruiting as well. But those bottom 4 spots, bottom 5 spots, even in the Big Ten, are always so wide open. So there's a chance for Penn State to potentially host this year if all things go well, and it starts by getting off the right foot in non-conference play.
Yeah, and speaking of the Big Ten, we got some pretty big speculation on Twitter earlier this week. You and I were talking about it, and we were kind of excited, even though nothing is confirmed and set in stone yet. There have been talks for the Big Ten Hockey Conference to play outdoors at Wrigley Field about the first or second week of January. You and I have been on, we actually went to 2 road trips last year. We covered, again, the LIU season opener for Penn State. We also traveled to Cornell to cover the women's hockey series up there. Your thoughts on a Wrigley Field road trip? Because to me, that would just be awesome.
Sign me up immediately, right? Well, look, we've already talked a little bit about, or we've maybe not talked about it, but teased the fact that Penn State in the next coming years, after the Beaver Stadium renovations, with their winterizing everything, is most likely going to really push to try and have an outdoor game, whether it be an NHL game or a Penn State game or both in the same weekend. We could see that as well. But then for immediately in the next 3 weeks, because those winterization plans aren't going to be done until 2025 or 2027 is when the entire renovation will be done. So it's going to be a few years down the road. But to see a report come out that right after the Winter Classic, the Big Ten wants to have 6 teams, and Penn State's included. The only team shockingly left out in that conversation is Minnesota, which is not really what I think a lot of people expected. You'd expect a team like Ohio State or Penn State to be left out because, let's face it, Michigan and Minnesota are not just the face of Big Ten hockey. They've been the face of college hockey for a long time as well. But it's a really good look for Penn State to have just the opportunity to go and play an outdoor game. They haven't played in one since, actually, there's a report that someone pulled up for me, thankfully. Back when they were a club team, they played outdoors in 2012, way back when. So it'll be technically their second official outdoor game, but their first one is a D1 program. And not just a great opportunity for us if we're able to travel to that, but for the team to go out there and for this program to get national recognition, right? The last time we saw that was when they made the NCAA tournament 2 years ago. They kept it really close, lost by a goal in overtime to Michigan. They got a lot of respect in that series, allowed them to bring in guys like Aiden Fink and Reese Lawback. But if you can go into an outdoor game in front of tens of thousands of fans in that stadium and also broadcast it nationally to millions of people, it can bring in more talent and attract more people to this Penn State program that, again, still very young, just a little over 10 years old is this D1 program. And so for them to be even considered in a potential outdoor game this early on is a great look for Gallucci. It's a great look for Penn State hockey. And it's a great look for Penn State as a whole.
Yeah, and I also think that it's just a great look for college hockey in general. I think college hockey's been on the rise within the past, few years. You're seeing so much collegiate to NHL talent. The Matthew Nice's and the Adam Fantillis of the world, playing in college, playing in the Big Ten, and then, going and becoming NHL stars and, top draft picks. So to have something like this outdoors in a market like Chicago, where they had received the #1 NHL draft pick last year, try to, revive that Chicago City, who did not have a pretty great professional hockey year. But that is neither here nor there. I think, doing anything in Chicago, doing anything outside would just be amazing for Penn State college hockey. And I've always wanted to see the Bean.
Yeah, I've heard great things about the Bean. I've only really been near Chicago when I went to Evanston last year for a Northwestern. Penn State football game, but never really got to go deep into the city of Chicago. And Wrigley Field is so historic, obviously being one of the oldest fields in baseball, and then to have an outdoor game there, especially when it's right after the Winter Classic. I mean, for the NHL, we've talked about it before in other scenarios where they've struggled with marketing as well. But if you can find a way to market both the Winter Classic and Big Ten hockey games, again, it's not confirmed. There's room, like they want to get it done. They obviously want to have it, but nothing is really set in stone. But if this does become something that happens, I think that you will see, like you mentioned, not just Big Ten hockey flourish, but college hockey as a whole. I mean, you talked about it, the amount of talent that has come. It used to be overseas where you saw all the top picks come. And in these last few years, realistically, all the top 5 picks, or at least, consensus top 3 picks, the majority of them have been from college hockey, sometimes the Big Ten. Owen Power, Adam Fantilli, like you said. And then this year, Mackie Samoskevich, a guy that played at, Boston. So you have so much high-end talent coming into college hockey, and especially the Big Ten. You've heard it from Guy Gadowski multiple times. It's the monster conference in college hockey, and to have 6 of those teams play, whether it just be 3 separate games or if they do a tournament-style type thing, regardless of what they would do, it's a great look for the league.
Agree with you there. Now, one last thing before we go, my wonderful background, which I got off the internet, is Pegula Ice Arena. You and I spend actually so much time there. We are there probably 4 times a week. We've been there 7 days a week sometimes. You and I are always in Pegula, but want to ask you, what is one thing that you are looking forward to, this hockey season, being in Pegula all the time? I've been going back and forth on a few, but I think that one of my, ideal things is I just really miss being there up on press row with you guys, trying to go to Auntie Anne's and make it back before the next period starts. So, I mean, what are you looking forward to this season?
Yeah, I think you mentioned it. We've been there so long. I think my butt imprint is probably, cemented into one of those seats up there in press row. But yeah, I mean, just the camaraderie up there, right? And just the atmosphere itself. Everyone talks about Penn State football, obviously, Penn State wrestling, but there's really quite nothing like Penn State hockey, the atmosphere there. And you can really feel it from press row, even when you're on the other side of the arena from the Roar Zone and everything. And I mean, I hate to bring it up. It's my last year at Pagula. It'll be my last year at Penn State unless I somehow magically fail a class. But
Well, maybe we shouldn't put that out into the universe.
well, yeah, we probably shouldn't. But this is I mean, look, it's always such a blast in there. I mean, we spend from the months pretty much of October to February, we're in there, I think, more on the weekends than we are in our own apartments or dorms.
100%.
And it doesn't even really feel like a job. It just feels like you're, enjoying your life. You're just doing what you want to do. And so, I mean, I'm looking forward to getting back up there in the press box, looking forward to seeing, everyone's face again. But more importantly, looking forward to seeing this town on the ice, right? I mean, there's so many questions unanswered about this team, like there were last year, but this is back-to-back years where there's been a really good recruiting class coming in for Penn State. And if they can build on that, you already see what the freshmen last year did. If they can build off of what they did last year and have even better sophomore seasons, and the freshmen this year are similar to what they were like last year, this is a team that can really make some noise.
Well, we're going to have to see what happens with Penn State. I'm so excited to be back in Happy Valley pretty soon, spending all of our time at Pegula Ice Arena. For my other CommRadio Penn State men's hockey insider, Josh Bartosik, I'm Adrianna Gallucci. Thank you so much for listening to Skate on State, and we will be back soon.